Hey folks, I'm attorney Roger P. Foley, and today I'm going to discuss smoking weed in your car and the police. Here are some things that you should know.
Come on, Roger P. Foley. When you need him, Roger P. Foley. Legal problem, Roger P. Foley.
One reason the police can stop you is for an equipment violation. For example, if you have a cracked windshield, if you have something hanging from your rear view mirror, something that obscures the driver's ability to see outside the vehicle, the police can stop you. Once the police have stopped you, if they smell the odor of marijuana, cannabis, if they can smell it, they can search it. They can have you, the driver, and any passengers in the vehicle exit the vehicle, and they can search you, your passengers, anything inside the car, and it's all legal. If during that legal stop, the officer sees signs of impairment, he could then charge you with DUI or at least begin a DUI investigation. Many people have concerns about consensual encounters. A consensual encounter is when a police officer approaches you and starts to talk to you. He doesn't give you any legal commands. He doesn't yell stop or stand where you are or even put his overhead lights on his vehicle. What he does is he comes over and he just starts having a conversation with you. So here's an example. Let's say you're sitting in your car talking to some friends at the park. You're legally parked. The officer comes over to you, and through the window, he knocks on your window, and he says, hey, can you roll the window down? Before you roll that window down, you ask him, am I being detained or am I free to ignore you? Because if you're free to ignore a police officer, you should. Because when an officer's speaking to you and you start voluntarily speaking back to him, he may form probable cause to make an arrest for something. If you roll down that window and the officer claims to smell the odor of marijuana, he can now have you exit the vehicle. He can search you, he can search your passengers, and he can search your car. And if you have anything illegal, those items would be admitted into evidence in a case against you. In contrast to a consensual encounter is what the police refer to as an investigatory stop. That means that the officer does have some probable cause to stop you. It could be something like a traffic infraction. It could be that he believes you're committing a crime, is currently committing a crime, or is about to commit the crime. It's the officer's requirement that he'll have to articulate that in the court. But if he's doing an investigatory stop and you ask the question, am I being detained or am I free to ignore you? And he says, no, you're being detained. At that moment, you should keep your mouth shut. In the example that I just talked about, if you were sitting in the vehicle and your window was up and the officer said, can you roll down the window? And you responded with, am I free? Am I being detained or am I free to ignore you? And the officer says, no, you're being detained. Well, now you have to roll down the window. And if he smells the odor, then that only gives him more probable cause to make an arrest. But it's very important that you ask that question, folks, because people often get confused and officers hide things. They'll articulate to the court that the individual was free to go, that they weren't being detained, that they were talking to them in an open place, that they didn't have their lights and siren on, that they weren't ordering them to stop. But in real life, they may have said something that you believe to be a command, and you may have acquiesced to their authority, right? They're wearing a police uniform, they have a badge on, they have a gun on, and usually when officers speak, people generally listen. But remember, ask the question, am I being detained or am I legally free to ignore you? One example of an investigatory stop is an officer may see you littering. He may see you throw something as simple as a cigarette out the window. That then gives him probable cause to stop you. During that stop, you would have some conversation. If he could smell marijuana, he can search you, he can search your vehicle, he can search your passengers. Also remember that littering is another way of saying abandoning property. So a case that often happens in the criminal defense world is someone, they toss a baggie, they throw it out the window. The police go back and grab that baggie. That baggie has a substance which is illegal, and you're then charged with possession and littering. One thing that's extremely important for you to know is an officer cannot stop you without probable cause or reasonable suspicion of a crime. He can't simply have a, quote, gut instinct that you seem suspicious. That if an officer says in a probable cause affidavit that you seem suspicious or you didn't fit in, he's got to articulate a hell of a lot more than that, because the Supreme Court of this country has said an officer's gut instinct, even though they're often good, without probable cause or reasonable suspicion to begin an investigation or to stop an individual, is illegal. And the officer approaches your vehicle. He parks his vehicle directly behind your vehicle. Now you have no way to exit. Now the officer hasn't approached yet, but as he's getting out of the car, you can't simply drive away, right? So he's capturing you. He's seizing you under the Fourth Amendment. If he does that, and then he has a conversation with you, and he says, I smell the odor of marijuana in your vehicle, and he searches it and he finds marijuana, you should consider having your attorney file a motion to suppress. Why? Because he had no lawful reason to stop you, to interfere with you. He, for all effects, he seized you and he searched you without a warrant, without probable cause. Gut instincts are not sufficient and will not stand up to motions to suppress. Do not argue with the police officer. Make all legal arguments through your attorney in a court of law. Now let's take a few moments and watch some scenes from our favorite stoners, Cheech and Chong. Here we go. Look at the size of that blunt. It's huge. Listen, if you're driving in the state of Florida, just like many other states, and you're smoking marijuana, and you have something that's as obvious as that, right? If an officer sees that blunt, it's called the plain view doctrine. He or she can stop you because they visually see something. They don't need a warrant. They see that you're committing a crime. It's probable cause for a stop so that he can search your vehicle and the other occupants of the vehicle. If he doesn't see it, look at this smoke. Something that obstructs the view of the driver, of course it can. It can be an equipment violation. And if an officer believes that there's an equipment violation and something is blocking the driver's ability to see out the window, he can stop you. All right, folks. So in this part of the movie, Cheech and Chong is sitting on the side of the road parked. Whether they're legally parked or not, I'm not sure. But it looks like Chong is saying, "Oh, the police are behind us." Now look at this scene. Let's freeze it for a second. All right. Now what I want you to notice, folks, is you see the angle of the car. Now I can't tell if it's parked legally. I don't know if that doesn't look like it's parked legally, but there's a sign in front of it. It's probably a no parking sign, right? Now, if you look at the police officer's vehicle right behind it, you see it blocks Cheech and Chong's ability to back up, to leave, right? If they go forward, they'd run over a sign, they'd surely be stopped. If they back up and hit the police car, that would probably, be an issue. So right now, you're not going to make this argument. Your lawyer will make this argument in court. Don't make it in the street, because the officers are now stopping you. They're doing, based on their actions, you can't back up or go forward. They are doing an investigatory stop. So let's see how it plays out. So here's the officer walking over. They look over. Oh, it's a police. All right, let's pause it right there. Right, you saw Chong taking pills. Now you notice that there were two police officers, right? You see that the police officer's clearly looking in. There's something called the plain view doctrine. We talked about it before. If an officer sees something in plain view that's obviously a crime, he does not need a warrant. He can immediately seize you, seize the item, and begin the arrest process. Oh, and Cheech just rolled down the window. So you know the officer can smell marijuana, right? So the issue in this case, let's stop it for 1 second here. The issue in this case is Cheech and Chong legally parked? Did the officer illegally stop them without having probable cause? Now, if Cheech and Chong are illegally parked, the stop is good. Asking him to roll down the window is good. you're forced to roll down the window because the officer is giving you a command to do so, so you're stuck. Again, you don't make these arguments. But if that's a legal parking spot and the windows are up and he doesn't see Chong taking whatever pills or whatever narcotics he's taking, then you do not need to roll down the window, and all you need to say through the window loud, right? Are you detaining me or am I free to ignore you? Because if you're doing everything legal and they don't observe anything in plain view, you have no obligation to speak to the police. Let's go to the next, let's keep going with this. If an officer asks you for your driver's license, don't start arguing the law. Don't start arguing, do you have probable cause to detain me? Give him your driver's license. All of your legal arguments will be handled by your criminal defense attorney in court. Don't get, oh, I don't need to give you my license. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. Just comply. You can say out loud that you don't want to comply, but ask the officer, officer, are you giving me a command? Yes, that's it. Follow his instructions. So in this next scene, Cheech and Chong are driving, and Cheech starts telling Chong, get rid of it because they're about to go through a checkpoint. And Chong says, no, come on, let me smoke a little bit. Here's the reality, folks. If you throw something out of the vehicle, if you litter, it will be deemed abandoned property. If an officer sees you doing it, it will give him probable cause to stop your vehicle, right? Just like the plain view doctrine. If you saw him right now smoking, he could say, based on my training experience, I stopped the vehicle. Or he can say, I just saw this individual throw a butt outside the vehicle. That gives him probable cause to stop your vehicle, to have communication with you, to smell the odor of marijuana, to search you, to search your passengers, to search your vehicle. It's all bad news. These are things that you need to know.
You got a charge, the situation tense. You need an attorney for criminal defense. Call RP4